Hi, Eddie here from a Mindful Emergence. So here's the situation. You just got back from the dispensary, right? Where you've gone and you've purchased some really gorgeous flower. Maybe you did a little research. Maybe you went in and said, hey, I want to get something with limonene and pinene, and I want a nice balance of CBD and THC, and you've really got that beautiful flower in your home. And you want to be able to store it properly so it doesn't lose potency, it doesn't degrade. And what you know is that the potency, the effectiveness of this product can be affected by light, by exposure to air, by too much humidity, by extreme temperature changes. And it can also be affected by premature grinding. It can also be affected by the container that's in. So let's talk about these. So when you get flour at a dispensary, they're going to package it up for you. Now, if you're fortunate enough to be in a place where you can buy 1 gram, you might end up getting it in a package that looks like this, just a little package, and they put the flour in, and you just tear off the top, and you're good to go. Now, if you've bought a gram and a gram only lasts you a few days, well, you can leave it here. It'll be fine. Okay. But what if you bought several different strains and you want to be able to have several available, which is what I do. I like to have a multitude of strains for different purposes, but also sometimes I will combine strains for a certain effect. And in addition to that, I don't think it's a good idea, personally, to smoke the same strain all the time. Even on a certain day, if I smoke something in the late afternoon and I decide to bump it in the evening, if I smoked one strain earlier, I'll choose another strain later. I think it's really good for helping reduce the tolerance level and just getting a different effect. So let's say you decide to get more. All right. So here's a container that I got that's got an eighth of an ounce, 3.5 grams. It's in plastic. I'm not going to go through this very quickly. So the first thing I do when I get home is I open this thing up and I take out the flour, which I'm not going to show you because I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube. And man, did I ever get a blast of terpenes there, that nice aroma. So, excuse me. So what I do immediately is I transfer it to a glass jar. So this is a nice little glass jar. And you notice I put duct tape all the way around it because I don't want exposure to air. So this happens to be Acapulco Gold that's in this container. So I just put a little label on here, Acapulco Gold, and there's my bud. All right. Now, sometimes you get a nice container already in glass. Here's a different dispensary that I got an eighth in, and it already came in a glass jar. Now, of course, as you can see, it's going to be exposed to light the way it is. So I got a couple choices. I probably won't transfer it to something else. And rather than put duct tape around and cover up all the information on the label, I've got a little box. It's kind of smaller than a shoebox, but along that idea. And jars like this, I put in. For example, here's another jar I got from another dispensary, and this happens to be a quarter. So this has got 7 grams of flour. So these kind of things in a glass jar that's exposed to light go in that box. So I'm all set there. Now, when you use it, you want to make sure that it's really tight. So if I'm opening it and closing it, when I close it, I really make sure it's tight. Okay. So that's what I recommend you do. Get a bunch of these little jars and set them up. So either you put tape around them or put them in a box, or maybe they're in a cupboard somewhere. And speaking of cupboards, now let's talk about temperature. Now we keep our place the normal temperatures, either hot, usually low 70s into maybe low 80s, that kind of thing. Those temperatures are fine. What's not okay is something else that I did. I don't mind admitting my mistakes on here because I've made a few. Is one day I was in a dispensary and I bought a pre-roll. Now I did a video on pre-rolls, and if you watched it, I'm not a big fan of pre-rolls. I recommend you stay away from them. except for specific reasons. And I did a whole video on it. You can watch it and I'll explain why I don't like them and when you might use them. But I bought this pre-roll and it was some situation where I was downtown and I wanted to be able, I was going somewhere and I wanted to be able to smoke before. So I got the pre-roll. And what I did is once I smoked a little bit of it, I put it back in this tube in plastic and I tossed it in the console of my car. Well, this is not the best idea because in the summer the temperatures go way up, in the winter the temperatures go down. Not good. So I'm not sure if I even have, do I even have it in here anymore? Um, yeah, there's a little bit of a remnant in here. I don't know if this is any good or not, but anyway, live and learn, right? So you want to watch temperature control, you want to watch light, you want to watch air, and you want to make sure that you keep it nice and tight so that it doesn't get a lot of humidity. Pardon me. So, the other thing I want to talk about is grinding. What I recommend, and everybody that I know that is pretty experienced with using this flour, is just grind as much as you need when you're going to use it. So you take your bud out and you grind a little bit for that evening or for that occasion. And when you're done, if you got any flour left over, I've got a jar back there that's called blend. All right. So if I got a little bit left that I didn't use, I'll put it in there. And maybe the next day I got a little bit more and I'll put that in there. And then it's like, oh, I got something I can smoke. So I go ahead and use it up. I don't want to accumulate a lot of ground flour because when you grind it, you're reducing the surface area, which is good for smoking, but it's not good for storage because it contributes to premature drying of that flour, even when it's tightly stored. So, just I re I remember one time early on when I started doing this, I was doing a lot of blends and mixing different strains, and I had a whole bunch of strains and I ground them all up, and I had all these little jars with all this ground up flour because I wanted to be able to just take some of that, some of that, some of that, some of that, put it together, and not have to mess around with grinding each individual one. Well, I'm not sure that's the best idea to have a whole bunch of ground flour lying around. So that's what I recommend. Now, glass jars are great. If you are going to use plastic, you want something that's BPA free. The problem with plastic is that it can actually there's chemicals in here that can affect the quality of your flour. It's possible that stuff can leach into it, and it can affect the trichomes. A trichome is a Greek word that actually means hair, and that's what's on those flowers that have all the goodies in them. And if those trichomes are affected, you're not getting all the terpenes and cannabinoids that you paid your hard-earned money to be able to enjoy. So, you want to be cautious about anything that damages it. And also, sometimes these containers they don't seal very well either. So, if you take care of your flour well, it can last up to a year easily. It can retain its potency if it's well cared for. So, anyway, there are some tips that I have that you might find helpful. If you've got some suggestions on how to store, then go ahead and drop the comments in. I'm always learning, and this is a place where we share our experience, our resources, our wisdom, and maybe a crazy idea once in a while. And by the way, if you're wondering about the hat, this was given to me by a friend who worked at the University of Texas. And this is a hat for the Center for Psychedelic Research and Therapy at the University of Texas. So he gave me this hat. So it's another one of my favorites. So anyway, thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next one.